Open session public meetings are subject to being recorded. Your image and voice will be recorded. Okay. First matter of business, the minutes from the last meeting.
I move that we approve them.
Second it.
All right. Anybody else have any questions on them? Any
No
corrections?
questions here.
All right. Roll call. Scott, aye.
Mary, aye.
Heidi, aye.
Cliff, aye.
Julie, aye.
All right. Pass 6-0.
6.
6-0. Yeah. How many
1,
we got here?
2, 3, 4, 5.
5-0. What am I saying?
I was like, no, we
He
know
was going to give you a vote.
I know. It's like.
We're giving a cheat.
That's what happens when you get two baby.
I talked to her about it yesterday. She said she'd be okay for another week or so.
All right, so everybody just want to get right into the budgets for fire and EMS, right?
Yes. Yep.
All right.
All right. Oh, TV. Wow, did I draw a blank on that one?
Do you want to go get it? Is Dee still there or no?
She's not.
What did we forget?
The TV to show you the budget on.
Oh,
Oh,
I totally forgot.
Where's the TV at?
Right there.
is it on wheels?
I don't know if it's in my, is it still in my office? It is on
I
wheels.
thought I.
Do you mind giving
Yep.
me a minute to go and get it? I apologize.
Give me a hand.
Oh, the chief's gonna help me,
Looks
so
like
we're
you
good.
have a crew, Kristen.
The wheel, I totally, wow. I
No,
didn't
it's
like-
all the way down.
It's okay then.
It's in Boylston.
well, but it's on wheels.
It is.
Hopefully it's all downhill.
There's nothing new on our Google Docs.
Now we're in session. You can't really do any small talk or.
No.
It's-
You just have
Well,
to
we
sit here.
can.
we
just
were talking
know
about
that
LA.
it's-
I don't know whether you know anybody.
A coworker has a son out there, and thankfully he's safe. He's in LA, but not right in the heart of what's going on.
Yeah. Similar, I've got a coworker with family there who just traveled to be with them. So he sent a picture from the airplane window.
It's quite a view.
Yeah, I bet.
It's not pleasant.
It's gotta be scary.
Yeah. Indeed.
Well, we've had winds for days and days.
It's been
and
crazy.
Days. It just doesn't stop.
Winds?
Of course, our winds are
Wind.
nothing like what they're.
Well, no,
getting.
they're not.
Good,
But they've been gusting.
yes.
Did it snow here on Monday?
There was some.
Yes, it was like spotty.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
a
there
evening
were-
at
there was-
I go down to Connecticut for classes, and it's like on the coast in Old Lyme. And I got there in the morning, and there were a couple flurries, and by mid-afternoon, the snowblowers were out, the snow was sticking.
Wow.
No,
Some people
that didn't
missed the
happen
evening
here.
class because they couldn't get, and I was like, I never checked. And I drove back home, and suddenly there was like nothing.
Yeah,
I
it
came
was
in-
all south. You must have been just on the very north end of
Yeah,
something.
yeah, the snow is,
I was traveling from the North Shore to home, and it was all snow squalls, but nothing was adhering to the ground. It was all in the air.
while I was out of town, I had a 25-foot limb come off a big maple behind my house. So it went away from the house.
Well, that's good.
Didn't hit the fence, didn't hit anything. But now I have this thing I
And
do.
you got this amazing,
I
over here.
huge branch in
The
your
right
back.
spot where everyone can get a good
Yeah, just
Uh-huh.
leave it there. It adds to the
see
woodsy
of it. I don't want to be way in
Well,
the way though. if
I have
it's
a
right
friend
here.
with tools who
Cliff, can
really
you
likes
see?
projects, so I might give him a call.
I know how to turn to the right.
Are you gonna be sharing your screen?
I am.
How you think? I wasn't sure on, like, for the, online stuff.
I put it all in the Google Drive, so I was just actually pulling up the file budget.
I think everybody but Scott's got it open. I don't know if you have it open to the.
I had it open to the Google Drive, and I went in and
So it's
figured
the
out
budget, fire
Budget
unit,
requests.
so they all.
I came straight here with my work computer, and you can't connect to Google Drive anymore on that. So
course not.
No worries.
So,
We'll get you
I-
connected up here.
I won't be able to do it now.
I'm gonna be right in the way of this though.
It's fine, I think we'll be fine.
I shouldn't.
Do you wanna sit next to Scott? Would that work for you?
There we go.
How's that? Can you still see?
Sure.
Yeah,
Why do I
it looks
have
like
yours?
you're-
I'm not having eye surgery until next month, but yeah, I can see.
That's the calendar.
Why is it giving me no signal? You know, it just wants to torture me today.
Well, is it on your laptop, if you, make sure it's, sometimes you have to,
Do I need to hit
Where is
something?
sometimes you have to go to display here, see if that makes a difference, or you have to.
Second
Get rid of some of
screen.
these. I don't even know where these came
Yeah.
from.
Yeah, it's the second
So-
screen.
Oh,
The thing is,
this was
behind
just
something
already on
that's
the
all
drive.
sealed shut.
Oh, here we are, right here, right?
Do you have a remote
Um,
control for it?
That's last year.
Oh.
So you might wanna
Oh.
back up, I'm gonna back up and see at a top level, budget shared with me.
Oh, that was a little freaky now, it's just flashing.
There you go, 26.
I don't know
Now
what
you're in
it's
the- now
doing
you're in the
now.
right place, so everything
Well,
that, so department budgets, yeah.
Is it important that it be on the screen?
There we go.
And it was pretty far
Kind
down the
of.
page before
If
I
we
got
can
to
all
the-
access it on our computer.
What do they call
Except
it?
for-
Fire EMS.
Well, Scott,
I can give you my
mean, know.
computers.
It's not hard to read.
I can just sit behind
Oh,
somebody.
there you go.
There we go.
What did you do? You fixed it.
She moved it.
You did
Yeah.
something phenomenal.
She used my father's method for improving technology.
I didn't
Would
drop
she
it.
give it a
Move it,
whack?
push it, bang
Give it a
it.
whack.
Okay, I'm gonna make this like super
Look at
size, so you will not need eye surgery clip, and I will sit back.
Oh, no, I will, but that's okay, thank you.
Alright. Look at that, how's that? Okay.
Very nice.
My apologies to everyone in the viewing audience, cause I apparently had a massive brain failure today.
Well, it's a new year, we're shaking it out.
Alright, well, we try.
Yeah.
Alright, chief, you are up.
All right. Well, under my wages and salaries there and stuff, we have the full-time salary for the chief, which is my position. The full-time wages that are underneath that's the wages for everybody on the fire department, for the full-time staff, the call staff, and then what we refer to as the part-time or per diem firefighters, which are it's really just the call firefighters that actually work those shifts, some of the open shifts. So the way we broke that out was contractually it went up because we're going into the second year of the contract for the firefighters. And let's see if I wrote that down. Basically, they get, I believe their raise this year is a 2.5% raise, if I remember correctly. Do you remember, Kristen? Is it 2.5% that the firefighters got this year?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I believe it was 2, I thought that was in the last year. Was it not 2.5?
I'll be honest with you, I don't remember. It's somewhere around 2.5%.
There you go.
And then I also broke out the call staff that I have, which is about, I believe, about $313,000 of that. They're at a 2% pay raise as well for the town employees.
Let me jump down to that sheet, chief.
Okay.
That was the first version. We got lots of info. Oh, of course, it's sideways. That's helpful. You guys want to read things sideways?
Yeah, that's my spreadsheet for tracking the hours for the full-time staff.
Sorry. My computer screen here has gone black, so I'm having to try to navigate it through here. Okay, will it let me turn it?
Is it a PDF file?
Can you open it in Acrobat?
Yeah, you need to
Yeah.
open Adobe, not in
Oh, okay, not
the
download it.
browser, yeah.
There we go.
Now
I
try
should
your
be able to
dot, dot,
rotate
dot.
it.
Or rotate down, right,
Mm-hmm.
didn't
yeah.
see
Tell
the
the
same
chief
thing
that he
as
was the
you.
first one that we were gonna put on
Yeah, that's it's all right. I prefer it that way. That way, if I stumble along the way, it's all good.
Thank you for helping work out our bugs. There we go. There we go. Okay. those are your full-time staff. Do you want
Yes.
to take a minute to, I know we went to personnel, but to
Yep.
explain some changes that have
Yeah.
happened?
So just going across, this isn't. This is a sheet that I use in house that tracks basically the hours that they work. It's like the step rate that they're at, their educational incentives that they get, and the overtime for classes and the education that they have to maintain their certifications. One of the changes that I made this year is down below. You'll see number 5 and number 6, Liam Cushman and Howard Priest. They're my 2 newest hires that I have for full-time employees. Liam started November 1st, and Howard just started at the beginning of this month. What I did is I took money that I had that was part of that grand total of that $613,000 that we had. That was money that was allocated towards, if you will, the part-time coverage to cover those open shifts. We've been struggling across the country of trying to get volunteers or call firefighters to join departments and stuff. I've seen a tremendous, open shift problem that I have at night. And one of the things I wanted to do was have a full-time firefighter on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in hopes of reducing some of those response times that we have. We have a very active call department. Unfortunately, the majority of them don't live in town because they can't afford to. So they do come back for calls, but when someone calls 911 and that tone gets sent out, there's usually about a 5-minute ride for them to get here. And then it's another 5 minutes for them to get to the scene. And when we tie that in with the call processing time, sometimes it's a 13 to 15 minute response time for us to get there, which for me is unacceptable for somebody that's having a cardiac event. So I'm reallocating some of my money to try to put people in the station so we can get people there quicker and actually make a difference, because I don't want to lose somebody just because we can't have staffing in the station and we have the money to do that. So there's no increase to my budget to do this. It's more of a real allocation of those monies to go to full-time staff that are going to be at the station. They're going to be able to respond on calls. And that's my formula down at the bottom. That's bringing them in at step 1 for those 2 individuals. If you go across, that step 1 on the contract, which is where their hourly rate is at $26.08.
And if I could jump in real quick, that's one of the reasons, if you remember, we combined the wages line item for police and fire, because we have hybrid kind of departments that are shifting right now between full-time, part-time, and have a mix of both. So that allows some flexibility for, in this case, we had those open shifts.
Yep.
We were able to bring up wages significantly, to competitive rates through the contract negotiations, which helped to fill some,
Yep.
but the national shortage isn't helping. I mean, we'd have even more open shifts if we hadn't brought up our salary rates to be competitive. So I think this makes a lot of sense that it was kind of sort of in mind when we did that design of the budget, to be able to see where we were at and make those adjustments on the ground as necessary, because obviously those response times are key. We were just asked about it at the select board meeting
Yep.
Monday night. And I just think that this is a smart move in the right direction, and obviously that is at the chief's discretion, but we did go to the personnel committee and have a conversation so everybody was on the same page and knew what was going on.
So you're moving basically for more full-time, less on-call.
In a matter of speaking, yeah, the less on call is going to be for the actual response for the initial, the day-to-day EMS calls that we're kind of doing. Obviously, like everybody else, we do the majority of what we do are EMS calls. We're at about 60 to 70% EMS calls versus the rest being fire calls. And the problem that I was having is at night, if we had somebody that had a fall injury type of thing, that was the type of thing. That's where people are waiting a lot of times. And as we're getting busier, we're up this year. We're about 11% over where we were last year. Last year we were about 10% increase in our call volume. So our calls are getting more and more frequent, which means that we're also doing more multiple calls at the same time. Mm-hmm. So those are some of the things that we're kind of struggling with, is putting people in the right place. Just before. I believe it was just before Christmas, we had a fire on one side of town, and when we were responding there, we actually had a medical call on the other side of town. We relied on mutual aid for that, and we actually had to send, it was a critical call. We ended up sending more people to the medical call to help with manpower. And luckily it was a very small fire. It was controlled very quickly. And as we were starting to clean up from that, we had a third medical call that was literally right around the corner from the fire scene. So we were able to put people at that medical call very quickly from the fire scene that were leaving. But it took us a little while to get somebody back to the station, get the ambulance to get back to the scene. So it's those type of things that we're kind of dealing with as the department's evolving and we're kind of growing and stuff. So this is how
Do you
we're
know
trying
what's
to.
driving this increase in the EMS calls? Is it just more people in town, or?
I think so. There's not one specific thing that I can point to. We've had, I know in the last year we've had our car accidents. We do a fair amount of car accidents, in town and stuff. Looking historically at the calls, I can't pick one call over another that we've had an increase on. I will be honest with you, since I've arrived, we've had some pretty severe calls that have never happened before, and I'm kind of hoping that's going to level out just because it's a very uncomfortable feeling to have. But I can't point to one specific address and say that, for example, like 495 is creating a influx in calls for us. It seems to be pretty spread out across the board with medical calls, just more people in town, more people utilizing the service. I will say in my 30 years of being in the fire service, we've seen there's a lot more reliance on an ambulance where that never used to. Like 30 years ago, somebody cut themselves with a box cutter. 9 times out of 10, they drove themselves to the hospital. I would say it's the other way around now. When that happens, 9 times out of 10, we get called for it. We end up transporting the person and stuff, just because that mentality has kind of switched for whatever the reason is, type of thing. And I will say, it's obviously we deal with emergencies every day, and for the regular public, their emergency, it's what they determine it is when they call 911. So there isn't one driver behind that I can point to say this is why calls are increasing.
And then should be your part-time. That was just a little note, just in
Yes.
passing. All of us our contracts expire June 30th. And by all of us, I mean police chief, fire chief, and myself. Don't worry, we're not going to an island and create our own community. We did talk about that, but we think we'd be pretty effective at it.
Yeah.
So we are currently under negotiations. So there will be a shift, likely, obviously based on the outcome of the contract negotiations. So that is just something to keep in mind when it comes to police, fire, and the town administrator budgets.
This sheet here is for the full-time employees, and it kind of points. This is where I took the information that I use and I put it into what finance needs for them to be able to do. As you go across, you'll see the step that they're currently at and the new step they're going to go to. Where our most senior person at the top, Lieutenant of Fire Prevention John Polino, is going to step 5 in the contract. And then going down, our 2 other full-time firefighters one's going from step 3 to step 4, the other one's step 2 to step 3, and then I have my 2 new employees that are at step 1. They're going to remain at step 1 in the new contract, in the fiscal year. They're going through the contract. They won't come off probation until this time next year. So that just puts them at the step 1 and stuff, and they'll move on to the next phase of the next fiscal year.
Sorry, I thought that was the part-time, or
Nope.
I misspoke.
This is the part-time salary here, where the way it's broken out is the top 3 that are listed there with the lieutenant and the 2 firefighter EMTs. They're part of the union where they're part-time employees, meaning that they work. They all on average work anywhere from, you'll see over there where their total hours, one of them is about 1,248 hours. The other 2 are around that 1,800 mark. They have to maintain a certain amount of hours to stay within the union and stuff, and they get a pay raise based on that, going from, as you see there, step 2, they're all going to step 3 in their pay grade. So I kind of factored that out on the pay raise that they're getting with the step that they receive in the contract. And then the last line that exists there is the call firefighters, and that's the rest of my department that, wherever they're working, whether they're doing shift work, coming back for recalls for emergencies, or covering any of the open shifts, they get paid, an hourly rate based on where they sit with the personnel committee. So I kind of broke that down, and that was based on the equation. The $182,000 that's there is kind of divvied up between the 20 or so that exist within that group throughout the year. So instead of, because there's no way for me to figure out what every one of them is going to do for hours or something, because they're on call and they can pick up hours kind of here or there. That's how I kind of broke that out for where that money kind of goes for. Oops, sorry. This is kind of a supplemental funding request that I just put in for, as I identified, we're going to have 4 full-time firefighters that are on shift that are working, if you will, 24/7. They work by themselves on 4 different shifts. Ideally, if I was to build out the department and stuff for all of my full-time employees, I'd have 2 full-time employees per shift. That way, as soon as the call came in, they could take the ambulance, or if it was a fire call, they'd take the engine. Kind of looking at what the salary is, and where the starting salary is, that $114,000 is what I would need to put on 2 additional firefighters that would bring me to, if you will, 50% completion of the shifts. 2 of the shifts would have 2 firefighters. 2 of the shifts would only have 1, which would help to reduce that response time. It would show what those 2 shifts could actually do. With 2 people on it, how quickly their response times are, how quickly they can turn around for other calls, that type of thing, versus my 2 shifts that would have 1 firefighter on it. One of the things that, as I kind of said at the beginning here, I'm kind of transferring money from, if you will, that part-time area into the full-timers when I don't have that capacity with the part-time people. This is something where I may transfer money from that in the future to kind of move that over if I'm not getting the response. My hope is by having 1 firefighter on constantly, it'll draw in some of my call firefighters to feel more comfortable taking a shift and being here with a full-time firefighter they tend to have a little bit more responsibility. They're actually here every day, so they know where the equipment is. They know what to do at the hospitals to restock the truck. And, when they have to do the paperwork for the state, it's a little bit easier when you have somebody that's very fluid at it that can help you with it, as opposed to if you're there with, somebody that is also struggling as you would be with the paperwork and stuff too, and with the procedures. My hope is that I'm going to get more of those call firefighters taking shifts and covering those openings. But in the event that I don't, after a 6 or 8 month period, I may look at moving some of that money to kind of cover that again as well and move to that next step. So this would be that next phase.
And then I think that we'll go back up to the first page for the expenses.
Just before you go to the expenses, so if you had 2 people covering each of the shifts, how many total would you need?
8 altogether.
You have 4 right now.
I have 4 that work the shift. John Polino kind of works during the day, kind of backfilling some of those shifts, and he's also doing a lot of the inspectional work. He's there as an officer during the day to oversee the other 2 firefighters that are on duty. So those four that I have now, if I hired the other 2, it would bring me up to 6. I would need 8 to be at 24/7, if you will, rotation with a full complement.
I think on your expenses, you just had the uniform increase.
Yes,
correct?
we're kind of directed to do a level funding this year and stuff, which I've kind of gone forward with doing in this proposal, where I've kind of, if you will, chopped up the money there and stuff to keep it where it is. The only increase I have is down underneath uniforms, because I have the 2 new full-time people and stuff where they get $1,200 for uniforms, $1,250. It's a $2,500 increase on that. Everything else, as I'm building out the budget and kind of looking at things and how to run things within the department, I'm going to try to stay level funded so that I can kind of keep things without an increase. I've kind of broken out where we kind of are with the money that we've kind of spent in the past and stuff, with different things on there for like gas, for vehicle repairs, for fire apparatus and ambulance. And a lot of times those are unknown. So I could have a breakdown that I'm not anticipating that may cost a little bit more. But I'm looking at other ways trying to fund that. One of the biggest drivers that I have right now is my ALS costs, which, if you don't mind scrolling up just a little bit on that, Kristen.
Yep, absolutely.
Right there, the second one down, the contracted services for ALS at $42,000. That was last year's fees that we paid out, and the 2 providers that we predominantly pay to are Bolton, the town of Bolton for their paramedic service, and Patriot Ambulance. It's about $350 a call if we're using Bolton. It's $425 if we're using Patriot. And then I have other ALS services that I have contracts with and stuff too that will pay out, and some are rather expensive at $1,200 a call. This year, just seeing again with the increase in calls that we had, where we just finished out calendar year 2024, with the increase in calls that I've had, I've spent out for this year, I've spent out over $27,000 in ALS fees, which means I'll probably end the year, I'm going to end somewhere in the fiscal year, somewhere around $52,000 to $55,000. And those are the costs, as I said, as our call volume goes up with that 10% each year that we've had. The EMS being probably the biggest, portion of that. That's the one that's driving us and stuff. That's the number that I'll see that'll continue to rise. One of the things I'm looking to do in the future is I'm going to try to play around with that with the revenue side of things to see about, again, I don't want to keep coming back to the taxpayers to ask for an increase, but if there's a way of funding that through the ambulance receipts to kind of bring that so that as that increases, as those calls increase, we're also increasing the revenue that we're making for the town too. So I am working with Kristen in June to try to track that so that as those numbers go up, I'm hoping that I can, if my budget needs to go up, it's going to reflect that in the revenue side as well. So again, it's not something that's coming out of the taxpayers' money. But I can't show revenue on this because I'm not bringing revenue into the budget. I'm bringing it into the town.
So June, where does that revenue land on these?
Right now, we have it set up in the receipts reserve for appropriation, and we appropriate money out of that.
I see.
That,
Okay.
but it has to be, right now, the way that it's set up, it has to be used for expenses related to the ambulance.
Yep.
I think in the past, usually we used it mostly for the personnel.
Mhm.
But we've started to use it a little bit more for new vehicles or
Yep.
towards new vehicles, so.
Yeah.
What is the reimbursement rate per call that we get?
Per call, the way it works is for every transport we get, on average, it's about $600 that we'll pull in. And I say that because we have the Medicare rate, which is very low, and then we have people that do have insurance that they pay more. And then you do have people that don't have any insurance whatsoever and stuff, and with some of those people, we don't get any payments on. So we that's the kind of looking at it, that's the general average, if you will, for every transport we have, it's about $600.
What is the Medicare rate, do you know?
I don't off the top of my head. As a matter of fact, I just got something, there was an increase in that, which I need to get together with you on because
Is that the new 2025
Yes. Yep.
changes that are coming?
Yep. So and again, those are it's one of those things. It's like again, it's like as you look at the call volume and stuff like that. And we have a pretty good, if you will, diverse group that we have between people that are on Medicare, people that have insurance. We do have a lot of transports that we do out of Emerson Urgent Care, and most of the people that go there do have insurance, so we do see revenue from that. So it's trying to look at that, and that's one of the things why I want to capture as many calls, because when we have for example, if we can't capture a call at night because we're delayed because I don't have staffing in the station, we'll usually have it, and they don't happen very often, and I don't want to see them happen. The other side of the business is that's revenue that we lose as well too when we have another ambulance that's transporting for us. So that's why for me trying to capture that it's good because my staff is very territorial, meaning they're very proud of what they do and they want to be there for the call. But that flip side is also just that revenue that we receive from it as well.
Chief, this is all coming fast. What was the Bolton contract? What was the per call?
I believe that one's $350. Yep. And Patriot Ambulance was the one that was $425.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, you mentioned the Emerson urgent care. I mean, does that show up, significantly in terms of percentage of your calls?
It does. That's a fairly high number of our calls. I'll probably say that's probably on average one call a day for us throughout the year.
Does that represent like 10%, 40%?
Let's see. I'd probably say that's probably going to be about 30-40% of our calls, probably 30%. For our medical calls. Yeah.
I'm assuming Acton Urgent Care they're right next door.
Believe it or not, just because it's not an urgent care, it's more of a doctor's. They go in for appointments and stuff. Yeah. We don't see a whole lot that happen there. The ones that we see from the urgent care tend to be ones that come in that are, if you will, stroke symptoms, heart attack symptoms. We will see falls with head injuries that exist there where there's an altered mental status, or another driver for that is sometimes people that are on blood thinners that fall, that come in that need to see stitches and stuff. They also are going to need to go to the hospital for a CAT scan or an X-ray type of thing. So those are the ones we'll tend to see out of there. And I will say they're usually, when we go up there, they're usually critical calls that we're transporting out of there, and it's appropriate. It's not an inappropriate use of the system, if you will.
Are you able to put a number on the number of calls that are for people who have no insurance?
I would have to do research to get that. I might be able to get that for you.
No, if you,
Yep.
do you have a ballpark?
I don't.
Okay.
Yeah. I wish I did, but that's an answer I don't have one for.
Not meaning to give you trick
Nope.
questions.
Nope. What I can honestly say is, coming from the other services that I worked for, when I was in Littleton, New Hampshire, we had a much higher rate of, if you will, what we consider no pays up there. But we had a higher homeless population that existed up there that lived in the woods that we'd see in the downtown area, and there was a higher percentage of Section 8 housing that existed up there, and there was a lot of people that didn't have insurance and stuff, and we ran into that quite a bit compared to our neighbors up there in the towns of like Franconia and Bethlehem and Sugar Hill that had a much higher insurance rate, if you will. So it's a factor, and I don't see that as much down here. I don't see the no insurance or no pays as high as I have seen in other organizations.
I'm curious whether Mass Health makes a difference in that regard.
I think it does, just because we have, one of the things we're working on right now is Mass Health does have a program for additional Medicare reimbursement.
Okay.
And myself and Kevin Colamy, who's my lieutenant, who's in charge of EMS for us and stuff, have worked on that. And my hope is we're going to receive additional funds this year. And what we do is we provide them with a lot of information on our call volume, our costs of doing business, because what they're doing is they're looking at what the real cost of doing EMS services are. And obviously, the more calls you do, the more you get back, type of thing. But I believe that we'll probably be in the neighborhood of $10,000 to $12,000 that we'll receive in additional funds from the state at some point. I'm going to guess around June of next year, just on the information we've just provided from them that we've been working with them on. So I will say that, yeah, that does make a difference. Massachusetts has a higher return rate on that than New Hampshire and Maine.
And that's always a lag. The revenue is always
Yes.
after
Yep.
you've done all the accounting. Then
Cor-
the revenue
correct.
rise.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, better than nothing. Right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
And I'll say one thing to preface, if you recall, last year we had a big adjustment on the fire side due to the first year of the new contract. If you haven't looked already, you're going to see it on the PD side, and it levels out, as you can see, to something more manageable in the second year, as your total increase for now is at 26,000 with the contractual increases and the additional uniform expense. So, because I think last year we were at 80.
I believe
To
so.
address the
80
first
sounds
year of the
about right for the
contract.
first year of the contract, yeah.
So it's by design to be able to
That's right.
level out.
Yeah.
It's just sticker shock the first year.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I particularly like the red corrections.
Sorry.
No, that's June. She
Yeah.
gets it right.
I know.
You're the
She
one.
couldn't find her black pen.
Give her a red
She
pen.
misses our rounding errors. I like that is it purple or pink? I don't know,
It's
but
actually
I
a
like it.
purple.
Remember, I
purple?
spent 18
Yeah.
years teaching
I
with a
have
red
to-
pen.
I have to make, I won't use red. No red, that's
No
purple.
red.
Oh, that looks
Red's
red from
bad.
here.
Red's bad, it's purple.
You are getting your eyes done, right?
Yeah.
Or technically, it's fuchsia.
Yeah.
There you go.
No questions for
Anybody
me.
else, any other
Yeah.
questions?
I appreciate everything.
you.
I have a
Thank
question
you.
not about the budget, but
Yeah.
about the project that Assabet has their hands
Absolutely. I
on.
was going to say, if
I mean,
anybody
I
has
know
any
they were on
questions.
school vacation for a while, so
Yep.
it was down, but
It's going very well. They've been in hot and heavy this week, starting to kind of tear things apart and get into it. And what The plans were received from the architect. We got them kind of late. We got them just before Christmas, so there's a little bit of a backlog there. But Richard Hanks, the building commissioner, has allowed them to start doing some of the demo to get into the floors to prep for future construction while they look at the plans and make sure they meet code and everything else. And we've had several meetings with the instructors and some of the students.
That was fun.
Yeah,
Yesterday. Was
yep.
it yesterday?
It was yesterday. Yep.
Yep. We had about, what would you say, 15 to 20
yep.
students who were
Wow.
extraordinarily well behaved, all juniors. So you're
Yep.
talking, 16, 17 years
Yep.
old, sat in this room and back here for almost an hour with hardly a peep and seemed engaged and interested. And I
Yeah.
was really impressed.
Do you have any Berlin students in that crowd, or
I
doesn't?
did not ask that question.
I will find that out tomorrow. I've been asked that, and I didn't have the answer for it. So when I see the director tomorrow, I'm going to ask him because I'm not sure if there are any Berlin kids or not.
Yeah.
But they're very excited about it. The kids are very excited about it. They were in here, and we got to speak with them and stuff. And to Kristen's point, it was very impressive because when they all came in, they grabbed chairs from over there and they kind of lined them up over here. They sat around the table with us, and we talked about some of the project and some of the nuances getting into it and some of the roadblocks we may have. And at the end, we talked to them and stuff. When they got up, every one of them picked up a chair, went over, made sure that the rows were all even. They put all the chairs back. So yeah, they're very excited about it and stuff. And it's a big project, but this is the first time that all of the trades, plumbing, electrical, the finish work, the carpentry, and HVAC are going to be able to work together on the same project. And what they really like is the fact that it's under a roof. Because they've always been out in the elements trying to do something there. So this is the first time that they're going to be able to do it. And it is going to be most likely a 2-year project where it'll go through this school year and the entire next school year as well, just because by the time they get here, it's usually about 10:30 in the morning when they get here with the students, and they have to leave by 2 in order to get back in time for the kids to catch the bus. But it's been kind of fun to see happen and watch them get into it, get excited about it and stuff as they're looking at the plans and seeing what it's going to be, and they're starting the work.
Yeah. They love
So-
anything that gets them out of that school building.
Yep.
I don't blame them.
Yeah.
They don't think of it as work.
No.
Right.
You know, if they're like in their shop at the school, it's still like school, still
Right.
schoolwork.
Yep.
They exit that parking lot and it's like a whole new world to them.
Yep.
And I could not believe they were not just quiet, they were engaged. Like
Yeah.
I was looking around, making eye contact, they were listening, they were curious, they were really involved. And
Yeah.
I was super impressed.
Yeah.
I don't know that I was that well behaved at 16, and
No.
if I would be in a room with talking boring logistics like procurement,
Yeah.
but it's a real life experience for
Yeah.
them. You're sitting down with the town administrator and the project managers and the fire chief and hashing out, well, this will work, well, that won't
Yeah.
work. And we are learning there are some parts of this project we will have to put out to bid that are not in Assabet's wheelhouse, which we expected.
Yep.
And with it being a 2-year project, the one caveat that I will put out there is with material costs escalating, there is always that possibility we may need a small amount of additional funding. We would look to the mitigation funding that we annually receive from Highland Commons to supplement, but there is that possibility of needing to go back to town meeting depending on where we land. So I just
Yeah.
want to put that caveat back out there. But it is really cool.
It is. The kids have been great. One of the things, having Fia as the comfort dog and stuff, and taking her outside and stuff. They've been here since probably the beginning of November because they built the staircase. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty impressive.
It's quite impressive.
It's and it's the I don't want to say this without insulting anybody in the trade industry, but you tend to build a staircase and stuff, and you do the minimum to do it. They overbuilt this. It's a temporary staircase, but it's wide. The handrails on it are huge, and it's designed for the materials to go up. It's designed to last for 2 years, and it's really robust. It's pretty impressive to see what they built. But bringing the dog out and interacting with them and stuff, they all came over to play with the dog and stuff. It's just funny because they have just as much fun. I mean, that comfort dog makes as much of a difference for them. They ask for the dog every time they're here. If they see me come outside and the dog's not here, they're kind of like, just like my staff is. They're like, "Where's the dog? Why is the dog not here?"
We don't need to see you.
Yeah,
Just bring it inside.
and that's exactly what it is. And one of the things Fia loves is apples. And somebody had dropped an apple in the construction, and she got it and she was running around with it, and somebody was kind of concerned about it, and I was like, it's fine, she's gonna eat the apple. It's like, at night, my wife and I would give her for treats before she went into her crate, we'd give her, she loves apples, like it goes ballistic over apples. So when they found that out, when they have apples in their lunch, they'll save pieces of apples to feed Fia, and they'll ask me if it's okay and stuff. But it's funny just to watch them interact. They're very respectful. They do a really good job, and it's kind of fun to watch, and it's going to be neat to see the project with the kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to that point, we did make the decision to do the outside staircase with the entryway, because we didn't want materials for 2 years being brought in through the lobby, particularly. I literally have a vision of a taxpayer being hit with a 2x4 by accident because some kid goes, huh, and turns around to talk to their friend. Nothing against the kids at all. I think they're incredibly responsible, but they are learning. And, you know, I also worried about potential damage to the lobby itself. So, and this will be something that we can discuss if we make it a permanent entrance from that way at some point. It would have to be a different staircase. That staircase would have to be covered or metal, or there's some different requirements that would have to be met code-wise.
Yeah, it has to be a covered stairwell, and if it's made out of wood, it has to have a sprinkler head on it. And so, which, you know, obviously one sprinkler head out there in the froze, it just, or you can switch it and you can do like a metal staircase, kind of what's on this side for a fire escape. If it's made out of metal, it's not, it's no longer combustible, therefore you don't need the sprinkler head, but yeah.
So.
It should be portable so you can bring it on calls if you need it.
Yeah.
If they've got it wide enough.
Yep. Attach it with the trailer. Yep.
But there are a couple of like accommodations that we made given the nature of having students work on the project that is still overall saving us a significant amount of money by doing it. You know, and another one was they asked, would it at all be possible to have a space heater? Because it's quite cold up in that part of the building. And yes, well, in reality on a job site, you're out in the cold, totally get it, but trying to take into account these are 16 and 17-year-olds, and we don't want to send them home frostbitten to their parents. So trying to, you know, be mindful.
The other thing that's interesting is which I haven't talked to you about, but we wanted to take a look at it today and stuff. You know, just with the progress they made, there's no insulation between the floor, the ceiling downstairs and the floor upstairs. So with the insulation as they're getting into it and stuff, we may have to heat that just to keep sprinkler heads from actually freezing.
Yeah.
Because
So
you opened it up now.
yeah, now that it's open and stuff, and the soffit vents are there and stuff, so you do have cold air going through there. So I will be paying attention to the cold snaps that we get moving forward, just to make sure as we work on getting that heater, just to keep anything from freezing.
Good. Yeah, we're finding that there was not as much done up there as previously was thought, and I didn't get specifics, but my understanding was there were more systems and parts of that in place in order to be able to connect to the first floor and build things up. But it's pretty bare bones. It's pretty much plywood up there, and that's pretty much it. Yeah,
they're trying to find the plumbing connections to see if there are plumbing connections that exist that allow the system to be able to be expanded to the second floor. And for those of you that have been around in town much longer than I have been, when I came in, I was told, yeah, it's all prepped, it's all set to go and stuff. That was the belief of everybody in the fire department is that systems were in place for plumbing, electrical, it was all ready to go. And as we brought in the architect, he was like, there's nothing up here. He goes, whoever did this for you, he goes, did not set this up for you. He goes, it doesn't exist. The only thing that we have is in the dormer section on one side where there's a staircase that's supposed to go in. It was done correctly so that's set, but everything else, it's like we're trying to find the plumbing, the electrical stuff. The architect looked at the elevator. He was like, this elevator, he goes, doesn't make it ADA compliant. He goes, you can't get the elevator up here. He was like, all I had to do was bring it up another 3 feet. He goes, and you would have been ADA compliant. He goes, but they didn't do that.
Because you get out of the elevator and there's 5 steps to go up to the second floor.
Yeah. So.
Sorry.
I mean, unfortunately, we can't turn back time 25 years, so we move forward. But it was a little different than we both being newbies had kind of thought. So we learn, we grow.
Yep. Adapt and overcome. So yeah, we're going to get through it and stuff. Assabet is a great partner to have with it and stuff. They've we've talked a lot about different designs and different things to do and stuff. So it's I think it's going to be really good.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
Presents some of its own unique challenges,
Yep.
but we are like the troubleshooting team over here.
Yes.
So we're working on it.
It's still cool.
It's
really
very
cool.
Yeah.
All right, anything else?
So if anything comes up, I please reach out to me, ask questions on anything budget or operations level. I'm happy to come back before you or talk to you. If anything comes up, please reach out, let your friends know. Just want people to be comfortable and confident in their fire department, so thank you guys.
Thanks.
You, Mike, I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
That is not mine, so I'm gonna leave that right where it is.
Would you like me to see if I can get Chief Shartner on the phone?
Sure, however.
Hey.
Sergeant Andre is here as well.
Oh,
Actually, I was watching the other room.
Oh, look at you. I was
ready.
gonna say, how
I
did
was
you
ready.
time that?
I was listening.
You got my text like a second ago. That was
Yeah, I
really
know.
fast.
He moves fast.
You ran right up here.
I don't like to be late.
Oh.
You're like a presentation pro now, aren't you?
Yeah, right. Yeah, you would think, right? So,
And those of you who don't know Sergeant Tim Andre, been with us for quite some time.
yeah, I just started my 10th year.
Yep.
Oh, congratulations.
Yes, thank
So, but is working on the budget with us this year. Did a lot with capital. You were up before capital last year, I think, and maybe
Correct.
even the year before.
Just last year.
Or just last year? Okay.
Just last year.
So very good, as you were mentioning earlier, some succession planning and training in place.
I would say it was good to see that Eric was bringing up other members of the team to also talk about
Oh,
the
yeah.
budget.
Yeah.
So it's not just one person who knows all this.
So I said in my interview when I got promoted a few years back that one of the things I want to do is take some of the stuff off his plate and help him out as much as I can. I have a logistics and operations background, so it just kind of fits that I'm here helping out. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Great. Happy to have you. Let's see if we can get Chief on the phone as well.
His son's not old enough to be drinking, so they're not like by the pool getting
Hi,
drunk.
Chief.
so.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Are you in a place you can talk?
Yeah, I'm just walking outside of Walmart.
Okay. Well, that's better than being on a plane. So
Yes.
we are all here with FinCom, and we have myself and June, and Sergeant Andre is here as well. I am just pulling up your budget. If you'll give me just a moment here. We have our large screen in here. Oops. No, go back. There we go. So, okay. I thought that, oops, that's way too big. I would take a moment and preface this as we were just talking about fire having an increase with their first year of the contract. As you will see, this is a significant increase on the police side due largely to contractual obligations. So I wanted to take a moment and just break this down for you a little bit into kind of bite-sized pieces, and then we can go through the line items. But essentially, of this $187,000 increase, $138,000 is due to contractual increases, and that is for 2 years. So we actually estimated when we did the contract an $88,000 cost in FY25 and a $35,000 cost in FY26. So that does track. The FY25 amount could not be budgeted as the contract was signed in May of 24. So we did put some funding aside to help offset that in an HR line item, which I'll get to in a minute, that I want to use for FY26.
Can you scroll up though
Oh, yeah.
to the salary part?
Sure can.
Thank you.
Sure. And so the reason FY25 was able to be covered was in an unfortunate way due to staffing shortages and unfilled shifts. The chief was noting when we spoke that there's been 77 unfilled shifts since July 1. So, which we'll get into also the need for the 11th officer that we funded partially last year and are looking for the rest of the funding this year. But overall, the biggest increases due to the contract are fully funding the educational incentive. I won't call it the wrong thing this year, which has been, a long time discussed in order to make us competitive and be able to retain employees. So, and we did a full market study of departments of similar size and geography when we did the full-time wages. So basically, your biggest part of this 138,000 approximately of contractual increases, and I'm leaving out it doesn't add up, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Educational incentives actually make up $82,000 of that increase. And so educational incentive pay went from $62,000 in FY25 to $144,000 in FY26. Part of this is higher than expected. We do have 2 new officers that came on board with bachelor's degrees that replaced officers that didn't have those degrees. Those come in at about $13,000, so that's $26,000. I would love to have a budget where we assume everyone has a bachelor's degree, but then we'd have extra left over sometimes, and so the way we kind of bare bones budget here, we basically have to adjust as we have folks that come in. But I'm really hopeful with the new contract that we have a pretty steady team right now, that hopefully we won't be having a lot of turnover, which will be helpful. Also in this 138,000, there's a vacation buyback increase of 5,700 due to the salary increases and the additional officer. And new to the contract is a force-in super holiday overtime. So there was $4,000 allocated for that, which brings you to the 138,000. The half year of the 11th officer, if you'll remember, that's supposed to start now, is 42,500. So that makes up the largest other significant change in salaries. There's also a 2% COLA for the police chief at just under $3,000. And then, as you'll see when we go down into expenses, you're looking at about $3,450 of increases in expenses. So the bulk of it is really on the staffing side to meet the contractual increases. So I just kind of wanted to give you an overview because I know that number is large, but it does represent 2 years and also part of another officer. So in summary, wanted to give you that. So I don't know if you want to walk us through a little bit, or Chief, are you going to walk us through?
I'm actually in the car, so
Oh.
I know Tim has all the paperwork with him.
All
So,
right.
which is fine. I'll follow along.
I didn't want to assume.
That was a pontify.
Yeah, right. I mean, I don't know what else you actually need here, need from me. I mean, if there's any questions or anything contractual that you don't understand or anything that hasn't been covered thus far, I think.
I know, I gave kind of the
Every-
main
that-
overview.
You
I'm
covered
sorry, I
all of
didn't
it.
mean to steal your
So
thunder.
it was a little bit fast, so.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of information
okay.
Yeah, I don't know if I can sum it up, or maybe let Sergeant sum it up
Well, let's
more
do
slowly.
sheet by sheet then. How's that?
Well, yeah, I suppose. I mean, how many new people have come on this year or in this remaining? This is the first of 2 years remaining in the contract, right?
This is the first year of a 3-year contract.
Oh, it's first year of a 3-year.
Correct.
Okay.
The FY26 will be the first year, or
Second
FY20?
year. I'm
Okay,
sorry,
so
FY25, the
is
year
the
we're
first year.
in,
Yes.
this is where we're crossing multiple fiscal years, so it gets confusing, I apologize. FY25 as of July 1/24 is the first year.
Thank you.
Of
That
the
was what I
contract.
was gathering.
Yep,
So,
I apologize for going
no,
too fast.
that's, I just wanna make sure I'm understanding it. So, over the first year, we had sort of half a new person and the other half is now hitting us this year.
Correct, and we've done that over 2 budget cycles now. We had, the 10th officer that we funded was, let's see if I can get this right, was half in FY23 and half in FY24, and the 11th officer was half in 25 and half in 26. So
Okay.
it was spaced out with having those officers come in a January to December calendar year, rather than hitting it all in one fiscal year.
Got it. Okay.
So this is not a new officer. I mean, it's a new position that is slated to start January. Given some of the uncertainties, I think, surrounding budgets, it's not something that, the chief has hired for yet. We are anticipating to do it because we do have the funding for January through June. But I think we also want to make sure there's, a commitment there from the FinCom and the select board to fund the second half, because obviously we don't want to hire someone for 6 months and lay them off. So when we did the position last year, the intention was to fund the other half of it in FY26. But I just wanted to point that out. If that piece doesn't get funded, it obviously doesn't make sense to bring somebody on right now. So we're in a little bit of a cart horse situation.
Okay.
So also, as I mentioned earlier, all of us are under contract negotiations. They are underway. So this number, we did adjust it with a 2%, but that will change. And I don't have that number yet, but those discussions have started and will continue. And I'm hoping to have them wrapped up in, I would say, end of January, early February, so that we can get those numbers nailed down a little bit more firmly. That's the chief. This is the big one. Just see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Let's see. Sergeant, do you want to just kind of walk us through like what the components are of salary?
Sure.
Because there's a lot of different pieces that comprise it.
Yeah, so as it's written up here, the averaging the 2,088 hours per year at whatever our base rate is, a quarterly going down, you get the salary. Now this is including the holiday, so because we're going to be paying out for comp time or in lieu of pay anyway, so we put that in there. The incentive, that's the education. That was the big increase, the 82,000 that went up. And then shift differential is going to be a little bit different for each of us depending on what you work. What shift is different percentages, again, all contractual, 4.5%, 5.5%, or we have a split shift, so some people get, if you look at like the second one down, the number 1044, he gets about half the time because they work a split shift, see what I'm saying? And then longevity, you reach that at contractual again at your 10-year mark, so it's a little bit different for people that have been here longer. And you just kind of add all that stuff up, and this is the same sheet we've been using for years. So it's the same sheet we've been using. I'm sure it's nothing new. Just the numbers went up a little bit, again, mostly because of that incentive pay.
Yeah, and you'll see if you go down that column, it's definitely a change. You now have, and one of those officers has since unfortunately left us. So we have all but one officer receiving the educational incentive, which is something that every community is really paying out and is pretty critical. And the select board did make that commitment to fully fund that to retain and attract, which I think is an important thing to do. But you'll see also at the bottom where you kind of get the roll up here of all the other additional items that go in there. I don't know if you guys have questions on the sort of, I don't want to call them extras, but stipends, other items that go into the budget on there. The new one is that last one, as I mentioned, the 4 super holiday overtime for 4,000. Oops, sorry.
What would that be?
This one down here.
Yeah, what is the definition?
Yep. So basically, if again, contractually, if you work the Thanksgiving, Christmas, or New Year, the family holidays, as we call them, they're listed as super holiday, but the ones where most people want to be with their families.
Those three?
Those are the three. Why? If you work any of those, the rate, your pay rate for the day is different. It's time and a half. And then if you get forced in because either no one's scheduled to work or people have the time off approved, again, in accordance with policy and contract, if you get forced in, then the rate is double time. So double your pay just for that day, for that one shift. So that was a slight increase that was mentioned earlier in that overview of about $4,000, to cover that. Everything above that, I believe, was the same. No changes.
And some of the things as far as like the forced callback and also the overtime for court, those are pretty much basically estimated because you don't know who is going to wind up for it, so he's done a pretty good job at it.
Yep. Yeah, but taking the averaging, you don't know how many cases going to court or when. I mean,
exactly.
We have people that just got summoned for a case that was 5 years ago, and now they have to go to court. Like, you can't budget for that. You know what I mean? But the chief's very good at what he does in working these numbers and stuff, so they're pretty accurate.
Can I ask you a technical question? If the officer has left, does somebody else from the department have to go?
There's still it's a summons to court.
Oh, so even if during another...
We have people from other departments, like we had one leave and go to Hudson, and he still had to go to court.
And then
from Hudson PD.
And we have to pay for it, or does Hudson have to pay for it at that point?
I'm not sure how they did that. No, I believe they paid it, but that's something that has to be worked out, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so that's another thing. So if you were an officer in another town and get called up, like you said, like 5 years later, the town would still have to pay for your time off to go to court.
That I know of, it's only happened once, so hopefully it doesn't happen all that often, but.
It actually happens, believe it or not, more with town administrators. If you were working in a town and you know, for example, and there was a lawsuit that you were named in as the town administrator, even if you're in another town, you have to go back and
Still have to go,
participate as
right,
part of that. And that one usually doesn't get paid. That you just go. So, yeah.
The subpoenaed witness just gets small per diem and, you know, travel costs, generally in court. But the fact that officers go to court all the time because it's part of their job means that you get compensated for it because it is part of your job. But if you're just a witness, it's not part of your job.
Correct. And as assistant town administrator, just as an aside, there were 2 that I was actually named in my former community. And knock on wood, haven't had to go for those. It'd be nice if that continues. But if that calls, that's what you got to do. You got to go.
Anyway, that's a little sidebar there, but that's, I'm not an authority on this in Massachusetts, but I think that's what happens. And we have a little experience to tell us that.
All right. Do you guys want me to move on from this sheet, or you have any other questions?
You also have anything in the salaries? Okay, just go to the expenses.
All right.
Just one for Sergeant Andre. What does there's a term, shift differential mean?
So we get an extra % for working the off hours, like the overnight shift.
Oh,
So
okay.
the 3 to 11 and 11 to 7 shift by contract, that hasn't changed in a while. It's 4.5% or 5.5% of your base wage to say, we know you have to be awake all night, sorry. It's a little extra money for doing it, yeah.
Mess up your life.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Besides, nothing
Give you
good
shift weight
happens.
disorder.
Nothing good happens after 11 o'clock at night.
That's what I was always told.
So
That's
it. Yeah,
we've
right.
heard that here in the finance.
Your mother said that.
My
Yeah,
mother
right.
has always said that, and I have shared that.
All
You
right.
may get a phone call in the middle of the night on the next one.
You keep me past 11.
Yeah.
That was our longest, latest FinCom meeting. My mother might call.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, so that's just another recap of, sorry, that's really huge. Let me just shrink that down a little bit.
Even I can see it.
All right, well, maybe I should leave it like that. So that's your difference total between FY '25 and '26 by position.
Oh, yeah, and I've got a little PS question here. Is overtime, or excuse me, is time in court always considered overtime?
Yes. Well, no, if you're working, you just go to court. Like if I'm working the
Okay,
day shift,
okay.
you just go. But if you're on a day off or if it's not your shift, then yes, you have
The court doesn't
it'll be
consult
overtime.
your shift when they call you in, so.
Yes, sometimes or rarely, yeah.
Understood. Okay, so it's only those instances when it actually is overtime that.
Correct.
Yeah.
And all of these numbers are governed by contractual obligation, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Very clearly spelled out. That's language we work on for a long time to make sure it's as clear as possible, especially for when it comes up to accounting, and we want to make sure that, you know, there's no questions between what's being paid versus what the contract says, and that we all line up in a row with that. So
I
we make
understand.
everybody happy.
And now
After
because
38 years,
a police officer recently left, you're looking to fill that position and you look for somebody with kind of the same credentials
No,
to
just
fill that
just
position?
not his. No, he had a lot of training and experience. So just the normal hiring process and that minimum standard. Yeah. So he was. If we're going to talk numbers, we'll be saving money because we had a 10-year veteran, you know, that is leaving, that was already at the top step, getting paid the most that an officer could.
Okay.
And now you're going to be hiring a brand new person getting paid a substantial amount less, generally speaking, depending on the degrees and stuff.
Degree,
Right.
right? That's the one wild card.
Right, yeah, so like you said, we can't budget for that, so.
Right.
Right, because otherwise I'd budget everybody at a master's degree, because I don't know, and
Right.
then you'd have all this money being turned back and not given where it needs to go immediately, so.
Yeah.
Understood.
It'd be nice if we had excess, but, you know, unfortunately, that's not the position we're in.
Nope.
So this is the part-time wage budget. So in the new contract, there are, it might have been in the old one too, but there's a minimum number of hours that part-timers need to work in order to remain on the part-time roster. So we actually did go down from, I believe it was 9 to 6 part-time officers for FY25. And this is the budget for part-time. So you can see there was a decrease, and some of that has been used to help offset, because there's obviously an increase on the full-time side, so.
With a full-time officer, will that decrease again?
I think you'd have to see how it plays out at the end of the year. Chief, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, it's a wild card because there is vacation, sick time, personal time, whatnot that they can take. So what I budget for is make sure that all 6 can attain their 208 hours.
And then if that number, I guess, are you asking if that number goes down more in terms of part-timers?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if that number goes down, we obviously turn the money back and we readjust that budget next year.
It's in a different position than the fire department, though, because the fire chief controls staffing, whereas in the police department, the select board controls staffing. So while the fire chief can switch from part-time to full-time in the year, that has to go through a budgetary process in the police department. It's what, no offense, some people call strong chief, weak chief, which I hate that terminology so much. I call it basically a department head chief versus more of an independent chief, because I think that's more of an accurate way of saying it. So
Okay.
you'd have a difference between which statute was adopted at town meeting for the fire chief versus for police.
I remember that
Yep.
today.
There you go.
Did we decrease the number of part-time police officers because we don't need that many because we've increased our full-time? Or is it just lack of interest?
No, they were decreased based on age retirements, not going through with the MPT, Municipal Police Training Council requirements, the post requirements. Some people just gave up.
Okay.
It's getting tougher, right?
It's extreme. Right now, for me to hire a part-timer, they need to be full-time academy trained.
All right, any other questions on the part-time?
I'm good.
We can move on to the expenses if you like. This is just summarizing the part-time. Oh, this is sick pay.
That's in,
Would you like to
sick
explain
pay.
sick pay? Or sorry.
Well, actually, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah.
Actually, with the police contract that they have, they are entitled to do a buyback. So pretty much it's just based on, they get 80 hours, whether they physically use it or they get it bought back. So we put this money aside so that way they're with the assumption if everybody is so healthy and nobody uses this, and they want it as a buyback, this would be what we need. But this is in the separate line item that goes into the sick pay line that we have in the budget. So it's all lumped together with everybody else's.
And it is not new, it has been in the contract
Yep.
for decades.
I think since we had a union contract, it's been in there. And then even before that, so.
Right, and so those things are often challenging to remove once they're, once they're in there. When you go into, as you know, anyone who does negotiations, it's, which
Oh, yeah.
which hill do we want to die on?
They've done that.
Yeah.
This is just fiscally prudent.
That way we have the budgeted amount for it. All right, and this is the breakdown of expenses. I'm gonna make that just a little bit, if I can, smaller. I don't wanna make a lot, but I don't know if you guys can still see that.
Yep.
Let's see. Do you wanna just outline the categories that increased?
Sure. I mean, I think most of the stuff is just the normal stuff that's going up all the time, right? So like the AT&T, like we can't control that. The Lexipol, part of the accreditation process, that's, up $500, $20 for the PO box. I mean, that's none of the stuff that we can really control there.
Lexapol does helps with the policies,
That's our
right?
policy, so we're going through the accreditation process. That's, again, all part of POST and being an accredited department. So if you're unaware, like basically individually, the police officers had to be certified recently. Well, now the next step is to certify the departments as a whole over the next 5 years or so. And that's all part of this process. So there's a bit of an increase to their costs of $500. As we're going through that now, we're probably 2/3 of the way done with the policy aspect of it, and then we'll move on to the actual certification and accreditation part of it. So,
But that way you're not starting from scratch for the how many policies you have to have?
we're at about 117 right now. We're going to be upwards of 180,
Yeah, it's a lot.
and it's just constantly updating and changing every week.
Oh, the drone insurance has to be added in, because that was a one-time donation, so it did have the money to cover it for the first couple of years, but now that does need to be factored into the budget.
Oh, it was previously.
It was part of that initial I think it was around $100,000 donation that was made. So we were able to cover it for the last, I believe, 2 years, but.
Yeah, that's correct, 2 years.
What's the public relations service?
That's the Capital Strategic Solutions, so like our website redesign for the town, police, fire, and I believe all of them, right, that went up there. So it's a company that was brought on, again, to help with our social media aspect and revamp the website for the town. And again, on our side of things, in the police department things, just kind of get it up to date and make sure they're helping us reduce the liability, essentially, right? So making sure that we are complying with, the POST and the public records request, and no one's saying anything or posting anything that they should not be, whether it be on the website or social media. There's a lot of rules and laws and stuff like that, and they're the ones that stay on top of that. So that's what that increase is, or the addition there of 1,800.
Is that something you also have to, is that part of the accreditation? Some of the website information, is that part of the accreditation that you might have to have certain things?
Certain access to that stuff. It makes it easier to do that. Yeah, it's not an accreditation requirement per se, but you have to comply. Like if someone has, again, the biggest one I'm using is a public records request, because we've seen that come, probably 3 times the amount that we used to get. So they're the ones that kind of set that up for ease of access for the residents or anyone that wants to get access to that stuff.
I look at it as they kind of review the messaging to make sure
Mhm.
that
That too,
everything
yep.
is on point with, anything legal, and especially in politically charged and contentious environment that we live in nowadays. We don't want to put ourselves at the center inadvertently of any type of controversy, so it helps with a liability perspective too.
All right, moving down here, the next one's the clothing allowance. So you can see there was addition of one, just with the addition of an officer, but then by reducing a few of the part-time officers, we went, had a decrease there, the 2,850. A little bit further down, we have a difference of the 2,200 for the taser battery. So that's what you referenced earlier when I spoke with capital planning and requested that. So we just had to upgrade some of our equipment, the taser equipment there. With that came a package deal, like we leased the stuff for about 5 years. We save a little bit of money by not having to purchase additional batteries. Now these ones are rechargeable, et cetera. So there's a little bit of a cost savings there by going this route and leasing them.
So this 1,000 is for older tasers, or just the expected cost for the new ones that are coming in?
No, we already have all the new stuff there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's,
It's all it's for maintenance.
Mhm.
So you get cartridges for training and maintenance.
okay.
Yeah. Further down.
That's as far as I can go.
The chief, if you gave me the only one, I'm not sure of the 280 for the dues. I know you touched on that last night. The LEDA, ISAP, et cetera. That was a addition of 280.
Yeah, everybody went up on their dues, and also now the sergeants are members of the Central Mass Chiefs of Police Association.
And then the last one, the academy fee, that they just increased it. MPTC increased it by $200 to get people into training. So
So what I like about this is, taking a hard look at where you can reduce to offset some of the increases. It's a smart way to budget, and what I always ask the, department heads to do whenever possible, so makes sense.
So I, right at the top, I have to ask about AT&T. Is there something special about AT&T Cell as opposed to other public safety related,
What
something
was the
special
total
about
increase?
AT&T?
You missed it.
3450.
I know that's the current carrier.
Yeah.
That's the
Chief-
first net, right?
Chief, the question is about the AT&T Cellular, the addition of $200.
Yeah.
Well, no.
So the,
Not the raised amount, but just in general, that service. Is there something
Yeah.
special about public safety with
So-
what AT&T does?
So we're part of FirstNet. We get priority on the cell towers, especially on a
Okay.
Friday, on Memorial Day weekend, and Monday when 290 and 495 are absolutely jam-packed. We do get priority on the cell tower.
And that's something
Um,
that you only get with this carrier, or is it?
Yeah, with FirstNet, yeah.
Okay. FirstNet's only offered through AT&T?
Yeah.
Okay.
FirstNet is AT&T. We've gone back and forth between T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T. I think this is the longest stint we've been on with a carrier. And, if something else can come out more affordable, I'd be more than happy to grab it. But they're all competitive right now, right about the same price.
Yeah, no problem. I just, I always have to ask these things, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why I sit here. Heidi likes it that I'm asking these questions.
Get home, Harry.
That's good to ask.
Can we do something different here?
No.
I got it.
We're gonna work on your comedy routine next.
I'm accepting it. Everything's fine.
Open
It's all
mic
good.
night.
That was Monday.
Only late nights, when someone gives me a pointer, which they took away from me in the first year because I was getting a little unwieldy with it on the TV.
Are we good?
So, yeah.
I think so.
Say,
Yeah,
pending
I'm
your questions,
exhausted.
that's it for me too on here, so.
I'm exhausted
Yeah,
my curiosity,
anything?
so.
All right, well,
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for being
thanks
here.
a lot.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you, Chief.
Oh, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Enjoy your time.
Take care.
Oh, yeah.
All right,
Stay
bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks
Thank you,
again.
sir.
Anyone else
Thank
need
you.
to send in, or?
I think we're good. I think we're all set, unless Roger wants to come in and.
Yeah, I'll go ask
Sorry,
him.
we'll let Roger off the
You
hook.
can always stay if you want to stay, just for fun.
I would, but see the way my checking account's set up.
I got you.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right.
I was gonna say you could send the dog in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't bring the dog.
Oh, you're right, he did.
That's right. I wonder why. I hope it's not because she was eating my plants.
Probably because it's too damn cold.
We're gonna
Probably on
we're
strike
gonna cut the
until
dog
the-
in.
All right, so those were the two, I think, for you this evening.
Have you had a chance to start putting in the numbers that we've been receiving
I
into the
knew that
master
was coming.
spreadsheet?
I have. I am going in a little blind right now, which is the challenge because we're still finishing our revenues. So we are up to the consultants in May. So we have May and June, and June and actual June, has been working with Kathy, our treasurer collector, at making all those adjustments so that we balance on both sides of the shop with treasurer and accountant. It is extremely challenging because basically what I'm asking them to do is two jobs, to do their day-to-day and also to do this full year of reconciliation and adjustments that unfortunately is quite cumbersome given the position we were left in. So we have received an extension from the state to submit the closeout basically for FY24, which is known as like the Schedule A, to get our free cash certified. So that has to be in by the end of February. So that is leaving us a little bit blind right now on free cash, which doesn't affect us so much here. It does for capital. But my recommendation has been to rank, the projects in terms of importance. And I'll be at the meeting on the 16th and talk a little bit more about that.
Can you provide any range of where we think free cash is?
No.
I really wish I could.
Nice try, Scott.
No, it's a totally fair question. Yeah. I don't want to throw out those numbers. I can tell you it's far less than $3 million, which I know the school has a $3 million capital plan, that would eat up more than we would have total in free cash.
Well, yeah, they're just, but their capital plan is looking over years of like, what would they want to,
I'm hoping, yes.
yeah, well, yeah.
Well, I
mean,
think that was from the capital planning meeting, it was kind of, it became clearer that even though they had kind of put almost everything in one year, they were also starting to look at it across several years.
Okay.
And they have said that they're working on having their own 5-year plan.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
what I
Which-
understood
Yeah.
is,
So what we,
Yeah.
and we were asking for a draft budget from them overall, and I think what we were seeing in the capital budget was sort of their first pass
At like
On
the
everything.
universe.
that they were asked to ask for. And
Got it.
so, but they still have to finalize their budget and vote on it. So, we did get the, at the meeting we had in December, we did get a sense of where they're seeing their level services at and where their pain points were.
Yep.
So I think that's helpful for us being realistic on what we can expect.
Absolutely. And I just using for frame of reference because I'm trying to give like a, and we usually we use 30% of free cash for capital is the guideline. It's not a
Mhm.
requirement. It's just a guideline. It can vary. But we don't have a ton of capital requests on the town side. It's not super extensive. So I think that's a little bit helpful too. And, I was trying to listen into the school meeting, and unfortunately, I've had the worst month of my life in December with health-wise. But I couldn't tell. I know they said they were putting a 10-year capital plan together, but I couldn't tell if what they were putting forward was going to be split out over years, or if they were more expecting that to be the front-loaded part of it. So no, I appreciate the explanation because I went through $3 million and I was a little
Because
scared.
one of the ones that I had brought up because they had mentioned solar, but it's like, well, you can't do that until you have the roof on.
Right.
And then you have to also,
Well,
there's a whole,
yeah,
it's like you
exactly,
can't do
there
that,
are
you
certain
can't do
things
that.
that, I mean,
Even though
clearly,
it was in this year,
It's-
this coming year's, but there's no way you could realistically.
Do it all.
right,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm giving them the benefit here in faith that they're gonna come, common sense and, work with us. I do not have an expectation that it's.
But they also have to shake out
So we were too
from,
conservative.
basically you think about all their departments as their constituents,
Right.
what
Their needs are.
I mean,
sure.
one of the interesting things that they came up with, that you and I wouldn't even realize, they said that they had the wrong furniture in some of the classrooms at Tohoto. It was too small.
I heard that. I'm picturing these tall
and-
people sitting
and
at
I
little
was like-
desks.
And I'm part of me is like, why haven't we heard about this before? Why does but I guess everybody else just lived with it, and now like, oh, we really have.
I sat in those chairs because I was invited to and went to a civics project presentation because of my League of Women
Yeah.
Voters. So they're not awful, but they're middle school size. They're not first grader. They're middle school size, and the kids that were in the room were middle schoolers. So I'm tall. I'm not as tall as Erin, but and I'm going to guess that furniture just got shifted around, and that I don't think somebody deliberately bought little furniture for big kids.
You
Yeah.
think they took?
I think
Especially as they say, it's 10 years later and,
Yeah.
Things
nobody's
been
brought this up.
shifted,
I think things get shifted around.
Because, I mean,
You do-
definitely
you
the
make
men-
what you have.
Definitely, what was probably being thought and compared was, we moved the sixth graders there fairly recently. So they were probably looking at what did the sixth graders have at BMS and
Maybe they
and
moved.
Boylston.
I was gonna say they may.
We need to order the same stuff for them now being shifted to Tahoe.
I don't think
that's
it works that way. I managed a building project in Holden when I was a principal, and you work with a furniture consultant for those projects. And they asked, the thing that you're looking at is the programmatic needs, and how does the furniture address the programmatic needs? And it's an imperfect process. You know, I mean, I managed it, and I was the one, eventually the principal of that school, and I thought, what the devil were we thinking? You know, you do your best to buy what's appropriate, but it doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah, the classroom that I was in, it surprised me because I'm used to desks and rows and that kind of stuff, but they were all set up around work table like things.
They
So
do.
there were
Yeah, they
clusters.
do
Nobody
them like
buys
pods.
desks
Like,
anymore.
yeah, they were all
Yeah.
pods, and so that to me, that was the biggest surprise, I wasn't paying.
Nobody buys desks anymore.
You lose connection.
So I
Anyway.
I wanted to go back to my spreadsheet, and the numbers are not firm, but I wanted to just give you a brief estimate. I did not want them memorialized on camera. So if you look at where we went from FY24 to FY25 in terms of taxes raised. So FY24, we raised $14,063,603.
Was it 14 million?
$14,063,603.
This was between FY 24 to 25.
That's FY24. I'm going to give you 25
Okay.
now. In 25, we raised $15,116,538. So that is approximately a 7.49% increase, but don't forget that encompasses new growth as well. So you're basically talking just over $1 million in increase, and as people, I'm sure, are starting to see the tax bills, it's not pretty, and that's to give us $1 million. So what we ended up doing in terms of actual rate increase between 24 and 25 was closer to that 5% that we talked about before on the tax levy, as opposed to 2.5. I always start with 2.5 because that's Prop 2.5, and that's where we need to be at unless we want to tap into excess levy. So if I take where we started last year for FY25, which is the 15 million figure that I just gave you, and I take 2.5% of an increase, what that gives me is $377,913. Okay? So that's your first revenue increase
What's the number again?
approximation.
3.
377,913. That's if you're just doing 2.5%. The next revenue factor on an increase is what's known as new growth. That has gone down because we have no new growth. So unfortunately, we actually overestimated slightly on new growth for, it looks like, 25 based on what we're seeing. So we estimated 300,000 for new growth in 25, and the assessor is really only comfortable with me estimating 200,000 in 26. So we've lost $100,000 there. Granted, you're gaining 200, but I wish that we were gaining 3, like we were gaining in previous years. So now you figure you're up to about 577,000, and this is new dollars basically that we have to fund any budgetary increases on the school side, on the town side, everywhere. That includes the $87,000 that Assabet is estimating that they're going up. Worcester Regional is going up by $70,000 or $80,000. Health insurance goes up by that much. The number goes pretty quick. The other key factor is what's known as local receipts. That is my wild card right now that I cannot estimate because I haven't closed out the revenues for FY24. So I have to basically level those at FY25 numbers because I don't have the 24 numbers to use to estimate 26, which is typically how, this is why it gets confusing this time of year because we're actually crossing 3 fiscal years. We're looking back at 24 actuals against 25 projections to determine what 26 should be. So until I have,
You're using 2 years of data, or 1.5 years of data, which
correct.
is fine.
But I only have half year data right now, essentially. Until I have all of 24, I'm really blind on the local receipts. So if you ask me right now where we're at in terms of new
our
revenue.
issue is on fiscal 24 that we're doing
Correct.
that. Yeah,
Correct.
Yeah. I always
So I'm not
get lost.
comfortable going up on local receipts beyond what we
Uh-huh.
put in for 25 because all I have to go off of is 23 right now. And a little
Okay.
bit of 25.
Well, is the reconciliation process halfway through the 24?
It is in
To
May.
know? Through
Well, we're getting there. It's
Right
Jim,
now,
Jim
we're
doesn't
only-
like what I just asked.
No. No, we're not where we need to be to even make a half a year.
Okay,
right.
yeah.
So, oh, I'm sorry. I understand what she was asking now. I
Yeah,
misinterpreted
even
your
though,
question.
The
Yeah.
consultant is where they need to be in May, working on May now. We're still in September trying to
Fix all the
weed
adjustments.
everything out just to make heads or tails out of it, so.
And
Okay.
that's the focus of the next 2 months until we can get the Schedule A in, along with all of the regular day-to-day operations. So it is a huge challenge and a huge burden that I don't take lightly that the financial team is dealing with. So I am trying to be respectful of that piece of it too and not put too much pressure, but also try to build a budget. So it's a balance, right? Because I know people are, putting in a lot of extra hours and working as fast as they can, but we are unfortunately in this situation and it's taking us a little while to dig ourselves out of it.
Did you mention a point in February when there was a target to be done?
The Schedule A is normally due the end of October.
Uh-huh.
Because of our situation that we're in, Schedule A is pretty much a summary of the whole
Yep.
year, is what
Mhm.
it is, and without numbers, you can't do that. So we did ask for an extension, and they gave us till the end of February to
End of
do that, so
February.
I've got about like
And is
6.5 weeks to get everything up to date, and then start the closing and finish the closing by the end of.
Is that what the Department of Revenue?
Yes, the
Requires-
Department of Revenue, if it's later than that, they'll start holding up our cherry sheet funds.
Mhm.
So the local receipts piece, do I estimate there'll be a little bit of potential increase there? Yes. Are we talking hundreds of thousands of dollars? No. I don't want to venture a guess on that piece at this point because I genuinely do not know. So what I can give you for information is 200,000 in new growth is what the assessor is comfortable based on her information, and what that 2.5% would be over the FY25 actuals for property taxes. I mean, that's really, in state aid, if anything, it goes up a couple grand if we're lucky. I think last year state aid went up, was it 8,000 maybe? Let me just see.
We may have a couple of little increases maybe on meals tax where we have the new restaurant opening.
That's true. We do have the West End Tavern that opened. We still, though, have the Fridays vacancy at the mall. So I can't really account much for that. And I misspoke. Although state aid for unrestricted general aid was level funded overall, due to exemptions, which backside cherry sheet went down. No, I misspoke. I'm sorry. So we ended up getting a total of $282,571. Our actual veterans exemption reimbursement that we get through Chapter 117. Is that what it is? I always get that number wrong. But basically, the state reimbursement that veterans are entitled to, we just had less veterans that were eligible for that. So that number actually went down in terms of what we received from the state in FY26 by 3.2%, or approximately $9,000. So I wish I had better information.
Where every penny counts.
We really are, and we have contractual obligations that we need to meet. And I understand that the school numbers are preliminary. The 1.5 million on the operating side scares me. And I understand they're going to come down from that, but I don't anticipate them coming down by $1 million. So in my mind, what I can tell you is where we are at for excess levy, right now we have 1,279,031 in excess levy.
I'm sorry, what's the number, 1,000,000?
1,270,931 So it's come down substantially since FY '23, where if you look back, we had almost 2.5 million in excess levy. It's down to 1.2. So there was a big jump between 23 and 24, which that I don't have an answer for because I wasn't here.
Between, what was it?
Looks like 23 and 24, unless there's a typo on
We
here.
were really conservative coming out of the, in and coming out of the
And that
pandemic. You could
is-
see it in the free cash numbers, I was just showing Heidi, the free
Yeah.
cash over those years. So we really pulled back and I think we didn't pull, we didn't drop the tax rate. We really pulled back on our operational costs.
And that
and
went
our
to
capital
free
cost in that time,
cash
those
on
couple
what we were
years.
spending. Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't spend the free cash. We were
That's
up
a
at
lot.
3 million in free cash in fiscal '22.
Is that the Department of, or the DESI numbers? Because I've looked at, I mean, going over this last year, a lot. Never saw any number approaching 2.5 million. I thought our peak was around 1.6 million.
Yeah, that's actually concerning me because I see,
Sorry, Scott, which number are you talking about right now?
The excess levy capacity. I never saw anything of approaching
No.
that number of 2.5. I think,
I'm really sorry. I think that is a typo on the 2.5. I'm seeing 1.8.
That sounds right. 1.7, 1.8 million.
you can go up, if you do a search, you can find a nice,
Yeah, on
you
the
can see
DOR.
how many years you go back on the DESI
I
site.
usually
It's-
go into Gateway and pull it just
Yeah.
because we have that access,
Yeah.
but I apologize. That number
So-
is off. That does look funny to me. So what I'm seeing is it looked like it was about 1.8 when we did the budget for FY '23. There was a tiny bit used, which makes more sense. It went down to 1.629 for FY '24. And then it went down to the 1.27 for FY '25. That makes more sense to me. So I'm just gonna have to check and see how in the world that number came to be.
With the tax bills being received in the most recent days, are the offices here already being flooded with phone calls and people coming in and?
Yes. People are not happy, and I understand.
Well, hopefully they remain not happy
So
in a
are-
way.
There's two prongs to this, right? Because people's home values have gone up significantly. But there's also what we voted at the June town meeting and Maytown meeting.
That a lot
So
of people
it's
were not
both of
clear
those
on.
combined together,
And I
right?
think you've also gotta add the value of the malls too.
That
the
offset.
Yeah, well,
Yep.
that's the wild card, right, is not knowing the valuations of, like, say, how much that decreased. Because I think that came out in like April, or it
Right.
was the or at least publicly,
Sure,
at least
something.
when that, because it never really gave down the details. All I ever saw publicly talked about that if you went back to 2012, the mall was valued at 200 million, and by April of '24, the valuation was 29 million, which just shifted that burden all to the resident, well, not all to the residential, but shifted around a lot of it to the residential.
I mean, I don't wish the residents to be unhappy, but maybe it's kind of a wake-up call for a lot of people that brakes need to start, things need to start slowing down a little for the time being.
I mean, I agree, and I was gonna show you if I can get this screen back. Did it go to sleep?
You can jiggle it.
Oh, thank you.
Slap it.
She just spit.
June has the right touch somehow. There we go.
Thank you, June. I don't know, cause I tried and it didn't like me.
I had never heard this brand, either Furion or whatever it is.
I
It's
never
like a-
had, like, my screen though is
Like,
is
but-
black.
It was a COVID TV.
I never
Yeah,
had to,
probably.
yeah, my screen's totally black. I've never had to do this on COVID TV purchase. I like that. Yeah, so it's only letting me have it on one screen, so I'm sorry if I'm a little backwards.
In
So,
education used to say it's the product of the competitive bid process.
yeah,
You
well,
get
that
what
sounds
you
too.
get.
Way better than that. Yep.
So this is your snapshot of FY25 now that we have the tax rate certified. So you'll see what we had here was the residential tax rate of 14.19 and the commercial tax rate, industrial and personal property of 22.42. So here's the kicker. This is now your average single family home value, which is $659,860. That means that your average single family tax bill in Berlin is $9,363. So it looks, so if your value stayed the same, your bill is estimated to go up $620. However, the kicker is, and we never know how the market is going to play into that, and that's something that we don't have any control over. You know, I got a call from someone who their taxes went up $2,200. And the reason is their home value went up $100,000. So what happened was now they're making up the difference in that value plus the additional amount. So that was just something that I, you know, wanted to just reiterate, because if you look at here, say, you know, your home was valued at $550,000. Well, you could see like your total tax bill would be $8,300 this year, but if your home value jumped up $100,000, now you're at $9,800. So it's those two factors that go into it, and only part of it, unfortunately, is us. So, you know, but people can apply for an abatement if they think for some reason that there is an issue with the assessed value of their home.
And home values are determined by a state agency.
So we do a 5-year valuation every 5 years, which is an extensive market study. That's that money we put aside. In other years, it's the market, the market data from, that's what I was gonna say, from the sales that determine where you're at for your average property values and for bringing up, not your average property values, for the increases in home values. So it's sort of like when a realtor is like pricing comps for a home that you're gonna buy, and they're looking at what are the sales. It could be that home, you know, last year was $400,000, but the homes in your neighborhood are selling now for $450,000. So all of a sudden, you know, that's going to start to bring the value up when they average out all of those. And so that's really what drives it.
I think it's useful, look at the details on get the assessment sheet, the card.
What year
of
are the
your
5-year
property, and look at
cycle
the
are we
details,
in?
because I've had errors.
We're starting
I
the
looked at
5-year
mine
reval.
several-
It's a
That's
2-year
what I thought. I
process.
just wanted to make
Several
sure.
years
It's,
ago.
yep.
Remembering that correctly.
Change
That's the
for some reason?
$55,000 article that we had to set
10 years ago,
aside
15
for
years
the
ago,
lovely
I had my
unfunded
first
mandate that the
town.
state makes us do every 5 years. So Linda's working on it now. Those values will take place in FY27 is the year that we're gonna see those values hit. Because she's doing it in 25 and 26. So they will actually hit in 27. So that, I imagine, given the way the market is, that's gonna be even higher estimate,
Probably
higher
today,
valued
but
homes,
as of
because
yesterday,
everything
we
has been
haven't received our
skyrocketing.
bill yet.
From a real estate perspective, as a real estate agent, the average price, what's the average assessment for a home? 600 and
59.
650, it was about
659.
650, yeah.
That absolutely sounds spot on. I have to tell you, that sounds average. Yeah.
So your tax bill is about $9,800.
That's about right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not gonna change, I mean, the
Not
housing
gonna go
market,
down.
the housing market is frozen right now with the interest rates and basically
Yeah.
in lack of people building.
Commercial and-
There is not something, I mean, right now to cause things to go back to normal.
Right.
I mean, things will, and of course they could swing significantly the other way in a few
Housing
years.
bubble.
You don't, well, you probably are in a housing bubble because all things are frozen. But you just don't know how many years you're in this. I mean, it could be another 5 years, 6
Right.
years, 7 years before And it doesn't necessarily mean things crash, it just means that things can just start stabilizing. But right now, it's not realistic. I mean,
Right. Well, and this person, it was actually a condo that increased in value $100,000. So, you know, and again, this is where I get back to, you know, the seniors on fixed incomes who, you know, may be quote unquote land rich, but cash poor when it comes to being on a fixed income. And so I do worry, and I'm very sensitive as we build this budget. One of the things that Scott Hawkins on the select board asked is to, as I'm working on building this and meeting with the departments and putting in the data, looking at places where we could actually scale back and cut a little bit. And I did it with our IT budget. I found a couple places because we actually got a state earmark to purchase some new computers, and our leases have come off, so I can actually take that money out of the IT budget, you'll see. And there's a couple of other places that I've looked at, like I'm taking a very hard line with where we can go and what we could cut. And I'm not talking about positions per se, I'm really looking at expenses, which most departments don't have a huge expense budget. So there's not a lot, but you know, it's something that I kind of had in the back of my head as even I was doing our own budgets for our departments, but I've been specifically asked just to keep that, because especially if we're asking, you know, the schools to cut back, we should know where we want to cut back too, because that's really only fair, right? And it's something just to keep in our heads. So I'm keeping that.
Okay. Has there any been further mentioned schools, the conversation about the fact that, you know, the schools have not been assessing us for, sounds like at least the last 2 years or so of one of the bonds, which obviously they've now figured out, but yet now it's also caused them further heartache?
It's a really interesting question, and I'll tell you, we had to make, I had to make an executive decision. The state DOR told us to just raise it on the recap for FY25. So meaning just basically increase people's taxes, because there is actually a spot on the recap sheet for FY20. I did not do this. I'm just telling you so everyone's looking at me. I said from a policy standpoint, I did not feel comfortable doing that without a vote of the select board, without a vote of the FinCom. I said that is not what town meeting authorized. If we knew it was going to be another $78,000, I think the discussions would have been, what can you reduce on the operating side of the shop? And I just said, I don't feel that comfortable making that decision. And it was we had to make the decision that day so that we could get the tax rate certified to get the tax bills out. But there is actually a spot on the recap sheet for debt that you've basically forgotten to include. And I learned that this year. And I could not, in good faith or good conscience, just tack that on silently to people's tax bills. No. Obviously we had lots of discussions about it, and that to me was not the right thing to do. So if it comes to pass, I've actually reached out to our bond counsel. They actually have a conflict because they represent the district as well. Because I wanted a legal answer as to what our legal obligations are. Because in DOR's mind, they're looking from a very black and white numbers perspective. You are obligated to pay this debt. And I said, it's a little more complicated than that when you get into the nuances and the offsets that we may have asked for in terms of capital or operating, right? As we were splitting that up before. In their mind, it's not, because they're just looking at finances. They're the Department of Revenue. There's this nice little line item here. You could just put $78,000 in, and I said no. So the way that I left it is I'm waiting to hear back. The bond counsel was looking for someone internally that doesn't work on anything related to the district. I wanted a legal answer as to what our obligations are. And the school, I had asked what they proposed. I know they pushed it back to me as to what I propose. I feel that needs to come from the schools. And if it is in fact something that they tell us we owe, I believe it should go to town meeting as an article.
We do also have to keep in mind that the reason why the DOR was pushing it as we should do it this year is because we would be allowed the debt exclusion increase,
Correct.
which we gave up, you gave up for
I did.
this year, yes, you did.
Because we could have added that on as excluded debt because of the way that it was voted.
Mhm.
So as a 1 year, we didn't get to exclude, we could have, that amount could have been raised beyond the, limits, not that we needed to, but.
And that's the whole thing, is that it's gone. It's a one-shot deal
Yeah.
on that, so we would have to take it out of the regular budget if we were to have to come up with those additional funding.
So if it did have to go to town meeting, this would be outside of the budget request, this would just be an article to make a correction.
Yes, and I would say that in my opinion, and this is obviously up for discussion, but that would be a free cash article because it is a one-time unanticipated, not ongoing expense, because we now have the debt schedules. We know where we're gonna be at for FY26, we will budget appropriately. The other thing that I would say is FY24 is done and gone. Those bills have been paid, those books have been closed, in terms of what can be paid out. I would not be personally in favor of going back to FY24 unless I have a legal counsel telling me that we are obligated to do so.
Well, I guess the other question, since the bond is specific to, Tohoto on top of it all.
Yep.
It wasn't just us. I mean, Boylston
Correct.
was missed here. I mean, for example, this year's targeted share of the bond is that one that was missed, just our share is 95,000.
Right.
So you're gonna assume that Boylston was looking at a number around 200,000 on this bond that they haven't been paying in either. I would think it'd come down to both towns would have to agree to how they're gonna pay. Now one town's where that money. I mean, it's like where the heck
Agreed.
is that money coming from? I mean, where all their excess funds that obviously they had allowed excess funds to be missing for 3 years,
You're singing my tune.
$300,000 a year.
Come on.
Yes.
Because I mean, my question is
You
like they
took the
haven't paid it,
words out of my mouth.
Right, I mean, they
had to
paid
pay
it.
it.
right? So
Which-
you're talking $600,000 or somewheres around there. I think they said it was just 2 years, maybe. It was,
We know of, yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
we know of,
Yeah.
that they just had, and where was that money coming from? Excess and deficiency? I mean, how
That's
was it
what I'm
being,
guessing. They
and
would have been
how was
higher.
it even being split up between Boylston's share, Berlin's share? I mean, we know we've had a lot more, you can see looking back to the revenue numbers, the school choice students, we've had much more at Berlin over the last years than Boylston, right? Coming from Boylston Elementary to Berlin. So a lot of the school choice revenues, Boylston had sent theirs down significantly. So it was like, okay, a lot of those were Berlin money. I mean, it's like, whose money are they spending?
Well, and now we're being told by DESI it's just all one pot of money and they don't need to split the bills up 3 ways. So, but the question, you're right, like where is that excess
but when you're
coming
assessing
from?
it, I mean,
Yeah.
when you have, when the thing is set up as this, the elementary school are separate things, do we have any faith that the money that we've been giving, or on either side for that matter, is one town's been subsidizing the other?
Correct. We
I
don't
mean,
know.
that's,
And
no.
that's why I want the schools to provide more information and I want a legal answer. To me, that goes back to the schools as to how their council recommends they resolve it.
So can I ask a simple, sorry, just a
Oh, you had a
specific
question.
question. This is really to June, how much money was not assessed for Berlin in this bond?
Almost 200 over 2 years.
Well,
200 over approximately.
yeah, you can
Yes,
see
just round
there, this coming fiscal year, it would be 95,000. 253. So you figure that it's probably decreasing a little bit each
So-
year, but
Sorry, you're saying that's the
It's
estimate?
Goes the
actually
other way.
Not.
it's
They
actually
voted-
increasing?
They borrowed the opposite way that we usually would recommend.
So
Which was
that
also
number is the fiscal
surprising.
26 number, Scott,
Well, this is right, what they're.
what you're looking at?
Yeah, fiscal year
So,
26.
so you're saying that the last 2 years would have been a little bit lower?
Correct.
Okay, and it would have been 2 years, so you're somewhere north of 150,000
Yeah. Give me
for Berlin's piece of it.
second. I can give you an
To go
exact
back to
number on
something
that.
that Scott asked, was talking about, have you been approached by Boylston about this?
No,
Do they know about it?
I do not know.
Well, they do, because when I brought it up, which I'm a little disappointed that we got through the presentation and I had to go back and ask it, and because then when they go, well, yeah, Boylston pointed that out. Well, were you hoping we didn't talk about it today? Yes, they pointed out that Boylston saw it too when they had their meeting, because we know they met with the Boylston Select Board and Finance Committee together, so Boylston knows about it.
So shouldn't the two towns be using a similar approach?
Well,
I think that's what you're getting at.
Exactly, that whatever decision is made would need to be, I would expect both towns to be
I
doing
would think
it.
you would have to, but.
Well, this brings up though a different question, because having gotten the explicit requirement just to use the one number at town meeting, does it really matter whether or not they included it in the budget? I mean, in the sense that, yeah, they were supposed to budget for it, but it's their responsibility to come up with that final number. And then we vote on it. So going forward, can they do that again? Say, oh, we left something off of our budgeting.
I think the debt's a little different because we passed. This is what DOR was trying to say to us, because the town meeting actually voted to fulfill those debt obligations every year for the duration of that debt. So it's not like an operating budget where you vote it annually. We committed to pay that debt
but
over the life of the loan.
But the thing is, because
But
we're
what
all,
they asked for is all we can give them.
but that's
So
what I'm saying
if
is
they
that
didn't ask.
but they're supposed to include that number in that one number that they ask at town
Yes.
meeting.
Mhm.
Yes.
So it was totally on them. It wasn't on us to make sure they had done it. It was on them to make sure
It was
Correct.
included.
it was included, and we could only assume that they had
Right.
included it.
And they do the breakdown between what is ours and what is Boylston, so we have always asked what that number is, and they gave that number to us. I worked on both 24 and 25 budgets, and we asked for that information.
Oh, there it is, okay.
Well, this is adjusted a little bit, because this is a little bit different than what they presented.
Okay.
Slightly. I mean, it says the share of Berlin's 2018 debt is 93,234. This year at 95,253. So it's $2,000 less. Or else, whose is newer? What is the date on this email?
This is December 5th, so yours would be
So this is
newer. Oh, here we go.
in theory, either they didn't update it, or else this is at least presented to us more recently.
Right, so and what my response back on the 5th was, these are the numbers that we were given by the district, and these were the numbers that were voted at the annual town meetings. They did provide us with a debt schedule, but I still need the breakdown. And I did ask how the district does intend to address the discrepancy. But I know at the budget meeting, they said, well, how does Kristen intend to address the discrepancy? And I feel that the district gave us those numbers, and they should be problem solving on how to address that deficit.
Because this is, as I said, this is bringing up a problem going forward. If they was it really like the onus on them to have included a line item in their budget,
Yes.
calling that out?
Yes.
Yes, that is their
Okay,
obligation.
okay.
Yes.
So because that's where I feel kind of frustrated, is that there's nothing
Yeah.
that, we asked for the information, we got the information,
Correct.
and there was no way we could, we had to trust that we got the correct
It wasn't an
information.
oversight on
Our part.
our
No, and in
No.
fact, one of the things that was said was, well, how come no one questioned it when it went down? Boylston questioned it. Well, it actually is going up every year, and we didn't even know what the split was. We didn't have copies of the debt payment, and we also had a change in administration. So, you know, I trust when I get numbers from the treasurer of the district that those numbers, or the finance director, that those numbers are correct. I have nothing else to go off of.
You have to.
Yeah, well, a key piece here, I mean, is the fact that, just what you see in their presentation, the refinance occurred at this time too. I mean, the refinance, I mean, I just rejoined the finance committee in '21, and they were going through the bond refinance because they were at the 10-year mark of it. So the fact that the total debt number went down was not a surprise because we were refinancing, which to get a better interest rate. So going down was not, it seemed like it's at that time that things were started to be missed.
It was logical that it would be reduced, yeah.
Right, because they did the finance, I mean, the refinance was going on in '21. I don't know when it actually
I was
closed.
gonna say, cause there for a while though, they did a very long temporary borrowing. And then they permanently borrowed part of it and had temporary, and then they did a second permanent. So that's where for us too, it was very difficult because they kept.
Yeah, exactly.
So there was no way to know, and again, we had never seen an actual repayment schedule. It was never offered. And the only reason that we do know or need to know what it is because on the recap sheet, you have to actually put down how much of the debt is excluded, because that goes into the available levy.
Yeah.
So that's why we even need to know the amounts, and they have to give it to us as far as a separate amount.
Well, it just goes back to the reflection. I mean, it's like, yeah, there's nothing that we had that you'd look at a blip and go, how the heck did anybody not notice that thing? Because what was going on, and it just goes back to our requests for numbers, and we were just stonewalled. I mean, and this is another example. I mean, we didn't even know what to ask for in this case.
Right.
No. So it's like, even when we're asking for stuff that we had the numbers, I mean, the hesitation and resistance to give it to us, or for the school committee to pressure the administration to get us the numbers. I mean, that's why we are in the problems that this administration now has to clean up.
I just wanted to show that these, agreed completely, and I just want to show these are the debt schedules that we just received from the new finance director. It's great, first time we have them, but as you can see, they're not broken out by community or town. So that's also why we rely on them to break it out and give us the number. So this is the one.
And you've
for,
made that request
yes.
for them to break it out.
Well, they always just, we always ask for the number every year. And I actually, in my email, I actually asked for what the percentage was, because that way if I have it in my mind, then I can estimate it on my end and I can look at it and compare it to the number that, I'm still gonna ask, but that way I have a frame of reference.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, so I just wanted to show you that was the 21 and this is the 2018.
Does the percent change every year because of enrollment? Or is it a fixed percent?
That's I don't know. So that's
I understand it to being
it's part of their
budget. I believe it's over an average of what it's like a 3-year average of some sort, I thought.
I can't remember
Yeah, I
that.
thought that
far.
was,
I don't remember.
Because it wasn't something that was going to be fixed on, this is your breakdown, your ratios and your one, because who knew what 20 years later when the bond be paid off.
Was that
bond
pointed at a particular school or across the district?
This is Tohoto.
This is all
so it's Tohoto. So
it's
Tohoto. I believe that's the same split as everything else in the original agreement, I think.
Well,
I don't know if the debt is. That's the thing I don't know.
And they just say the correct values will be reflected in the budget request. So one of the questions I did ask, which I don't have that part of the email, but what is the split? You know, just I'd like to have that, especially, you know, for us to just have a frame of reference.
Mm-hmm.
Like you, Mary, I think that's the way it should be, but
Does it change every year?
Yeah, cause it would
As
change
part of
every
the
year,
budget.
that's right.
Yeah. What,
Yeah.
so what, I
I
don't,
believe it was a 3-year average though, it was like
Yeah.
they went back, it wasn't just going
Yeah,
to smooth things out, so it wasn't a,
I think it was like a fix for some period of time, but I don't remember.
Assabet, I forget what it is, but there's something that's fixed.
yeah. Assabet is a per pupil assessment, so it changes, that's why we saw one year, what, was it this year or last year that went down? Or it didn't go, didn't we have one that went
Yeah.
down on Assabet?
what?
Or it was very
Our
minimal.
assessment.
The assessment.
Our assessment well, unfortunately, yes, our assessment last year went down like $60-some thousand.
That's what I had 60 in my head, okay.
Or was it what was the increase this year? Or-
$87,000
Okay, 87, I
increase.
couldn't remember, I knew it was the 80-60, yeah, last
But
year.
you're right, because it's
it
based
was-
on enrollment, it can go like,
Correct,
Yeah.
so that,
No,
but there's no.
actually, last year we were down 83,000.
Oh, okay.
So I think the increase is 60,000 this year on Assabet.
I was just trying to open it.
I mean, this is on their preliminary, obviously.
So, Cliff, just a reminder here, I've got the regional agreement open, and,
I don't have it open.
well, the debt service on the bonds and stuff is included within capital costs, and
Okay.
those are apportioned based on the enrollment.
Okay,
Right.
but enrollment,
Tohoto.
I know, but just, so does it change every year, or
does.
is it, or was there an agreement to do an average, or,
Particular fiscal year.
because, I know, but
Oh,
that's what the
hang on.
agreement says, but when the bonding was created, I don't know what it was
Yeah,
said.
I know.
It may not match the agreement, you know, like,
Well, look at it this way, it's like
Well, there's
the,
a running average percentage for a particular fiscal year is the sum of its average, annual average for that fiscal year plus its for each of the 3 preceding, so you do it over a 4-year.
yeah,
Smooth
yeah,
it.
that's it,
It's
that's it,
smoothed over a 4-year.
yeah.
but if you
It's a
just. go-
4-year, oh.
Well,
okay.
it's the current year plus the previous 3, so
Okay.
you average it out over that. So, and it is, it's based on Tohoto enrollment,
Yeah.
Tohoto enrollment percentage, or a particular year, it's
Okay.
based on
Pretty
that
much
year
every
and
year
the
it
3
can change.
preceding.
Yeah,
And then that's how you apportion capital costs, and they include the debt costs.
so they should be able to tell us the percentage.
They should.
I mean,
They have to,
yeah, they have to. They should be able to, and they have to.
right.
If you look at just today, it's like you just took the increase in the police budgets, the increase in obviously early Assabet number, this bond that we weren't even paying before, you've already taken your entire 2.5% and are already eating into a targeted 200,000 new growth number. I mean, it's,
Right.
and then when you look at the, the number increase of BMS and all this stuff, I mean, 1.2 million in excess is going away
Dwindling.
fast.
Yep, and Worcester Regional is going up.
As always.
Right, I mean,
Since you're
that's
already there.
one
But
thing,
this-
one
since
thing
we're
that
there, the
never
bad news,
changes.
let's just keep
Just get it
just
out,
keep
man.
it going.
$82,966.
And what's that?
Worcester Regional Retirement, that's the pension
Oh, okay.
system, and
That's a
we
one-year
have,
increase, right?
correct.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's
it's
been
again-
going up about that much every year.
82 what?
$82,966.
So what's that, what we're paying out for retirees that we're obligated to pay pension to?
It's both town and the school district, right? Or is the town not?
No, it's
Worcester
just the
Regional is
town.
not schools.
It
Or
may have
do you
been
have
for,
some
uh,
retired
Aren't there
school
some
people in there?
secretaries and things that are on
Yeah,
Worcester Regional
the-
Retirement?
staff.
Sorry, that predates
Oh,
me.
okay.
I'm used to it just being the town.
I don't, and honestly, this was always one of my questions when we regionalized, is I didn't know if they would just keep it in our regional assessment, or would it become part of the school's regional assessment?
It's a good
Really good question.
You know what I mean? Cause originally we had the split, and not only were like custodians and things like that on our Worcester County, but half the staff's pay was based.
That would be important to know. What
sure we're
school department employees
And just double check that,
are
make
under
sure
Worcester
Worcester
Regional,
County
and who's
is only
paying
billing
that bill,
one,
Right.
so not two of us.
right?
But
I'm sorry, I am the bearer of nothing but not great news.
No, that's not true. That's
But
just
the
factual
the
information.
snow and sleep budget should be doing really, your snow and salt
I was
budget
gonna
should be
say
doing
global
very
warming is
well right
helping
now,
us out
right?
on the,
So we'll have a lot of excess money right now, or?
And if we get hit really hard, it's gonna be dumped in your yard.
Which all flows to, that's right, it all flows to free cash, but then we can reduce the budget for FY '26, knowing that we're turning into a tropical rainforest.
You can dump it in my,
I'm
you can dump it in
sorry.
our
It's
driveway, you can
after
take a
9 o'clock.
plow right up our
I was just gonna ask you
driveway.
what time is it? I go to touch your phone.
Yes, I get punchy
20 of
after
10.
9.
Yeah,
So
oh
I have,
man, that's why.
Okay,
One thing.
yes,
Because my schedule is really tight the next few months, so I don't have trouble like doing the minutes, and I did set up the calendar on the website. I'm also losing words because it's after 9 o'clock.
It's
Fair enough.
Go
So-
slow.
So the way I set it up right now, this is what we ran into at the hybrid, is I haven't been pasting in the link
Okay.
until the week before, only because it's a bit onerous, and if anything happens and we need a new link,
Oh.
because I've run into this
gotcha.
with other things with Zoom, like you don't know, for some reason you just have to use a new one. It's much more complicated to get the old one out, and if we have it wrong, we won't be able to have the meeting. So I have them all marked going forward that say hybrid and Zoom, and it's I've just been cutting and pasting from the last meeting's Zoom link and putting into the new one. The reason I'm saying this is because of my schedule, I don't have a lot of computer time where I'm at my computer to do this between like Thursday nights and Monday. I'm really not reachable. So if something has to change, I need to know there's somebody else who can make.
I'd be happy to.
yeah.
to
Well,
to
I
help.
have
And you have
access
Okay,
also.
because like
Yeah.
if you can't
I'm
get
pretty
me,
sure I have
so I'll go and put the link in. But if you have to make any changes, you might not. I might just not be able to get a computer to do it. So.
Okay,
that. I'm just checking right now to make sure that I have access, and if not, I'll request it from Eloise.
yeah.
Are we going to be hybrid next week?
We are, and I do have access. Yes, we can go hybrid.
Okay.
So the good knock on wood. I mean, I can't promise technology. Technology is
Mhm.
technology. I can't promise it's fixed indefinitely. But Monday night we did not have any audio issues. I wanted to do it with Brittany there because she can troubleshoot. She's the expert on it, and she, would have been able to fix anything at that moment if it came up. And she couldn't be here for this meeting, so I didn't want, in case Monday night there was something she had to fix herself, I didn't want to plan on hybrid for tonight just in case. But we are.
Was
Back
our
up and
last
running.
meeting had audio issues? 'Cause I saw the email came out the day after our last meeting.
It
in the
wasn't just
morning.
yours, it was the select board meeting and then your meeting that week. It was
Oh,
both,
okay,
yeah.
nobody had noticed it, or else nobody had fixed it
So we were like
by-
a silent movie.
No, that you couldn't hear the hybrid people and vice versa. So you couldn't hear me. Remember, I was texting Peg to speak
Yeah.
for me. Well, at the select board meeting, unfortunately, we couldn't hear Chris Keefe, who was on hybrid as well. So I didn't want to continue to have a problem where someone needed to participate remotely, especially with everything going on and around, and us not be able to. So just to avoid any issues, I wanted to shut down before until it was fixed.
Okay, good. Anything else for adjourning?
I will show you the excess levy numbers. I'm pulling them up, but
Okay.
that's, we don't need to do
I
that
think I
at
have
the
I
meeting.
have a calculation issue in here. I think.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got them, so
I'll
I've got
fix
them.
All right.
it.
Motion
Okay.
to adjourn, Scott, is that what you want?
Yes,
All right, you got it from me.
I got second.
Yeah, I'll
And
second it.
okay, all those in favor? Aye.
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 I